This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update 746, introducing Mod Sirion. Enjoy. All right, next from Diana. Out of all the RuneFest reveals, what are you most looking forward to? Let's answer this one right away. And, you know, it goes without saying for me. That's 120 farming.
Archaeology.
Yep. Archaeology.
Okay. That was easy. Number two, one thing I took away from some of the upcoming releases was a focus on pulling the story forwards by going into the past. The City of Sentistan quest and archaeology are the most obvious examples of this, but the Orthan dig site and Anachronia also appear to be a part of it. What do you think of this? Would you rather new content be pushed forward in time? Are you happy to see the blank or nearly empty parts of RuneScape's history and mythology being used to forward the storyline?
I think this is the perfect time and perfect opportunity to do that, because if this starts lining up with remastering, like, that's perfect. You know what I mean? Like, you're shaping the future by looking at the past like that. I feel like those things could really line up really well, and I like to know. I like to know the history. I don't feel like the Elder God stuff like did as well as we had all hoped. So
well, the survey
there
is
must
evident
be,
of that.
Right, there must be something about the past that we all just find fascinating or want to know more about.
For me, I think the dig site in the City of Sentistan have always been very interesting. I'd love to have more of that, but in particular in regards to archaeology and Orthan and Anachronia, I think that's perfectly fine to, look at the past history of the game world in order to move the story forward. And I think that in doing this, they can also use this as a teachable moment, because there's many people who play RuneScape who, let's just say, are not as interested in history of the real world as I am. I'm not saying that with this that the history of the real world should come into RS at all. Definitely not. But people in general in this day and age tend to focus on the current interpretations of events and meanings. And, for the longest time, that's how it's been in RuneScape. But when you apply the lens of history to anything, you get an entirely different perspective on it. And this is one thing I think they might be doing. I think by looking at the past, we could have potentially one storyline going on, and that's fine. And they can progress that going forward, because archaeology is the study of unearthing relics and whatnot from the past that have been buried in the dirt. You are, in essence, striving to get a new perspective on history doing that. But I also think they're going to be looking forward, because for anybody who's activated a totem on Anachronia, you'll note that you have those temporal disruptions that you need to close. And in doing so, when you're closing those, you get a skybox that's very reminiscent of the skybox on Freniske and Kethsey. And we know what that was. That was the world before this revision. So what I am assuming that's happening with Anachronia, and is going to happen with the Elder God storyline, is that we're going to use archaeology and, the dig sites at Orthan and on Anachronia to learn about what kind of mythology might have been in place with Elder Gods, or just pretty much any kind of lore aspect from the past, and use that in our fight going forward to prevent the Elder Gods from destroying that world and preventing that glimpse we're getting into the future of Gielinor when we close those temporal disruptions from actually happening. That's how I think it's all going to tie together.
Yeah.
So I want to come to this from a very, very different angle, which is more, surprise, surprise, game mechanics wise. I think the way that we have been trying to push forward into the storyline doesn't really work well if you look at things like quest progression. Every sort of chapter, people have to, like, the quest requirements are reset. you can play all of the 6th stage, pretty much all of the 6th stage before even touching the 5th stage.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't really work. And when you get into the game as a new player, the storyline is a bit of a mess, let's be honest. And trying to keep pushing that forward doesn't really work. On the other hand, by filling it, like by stopping the progression of the game for a tiny bit and just putting a pin in it, like how it was when we joined the game, there was strictly speaking a timeline, but it didn't really matter. We just put a pin. It's like it's now the 5th age, and we learned a lot about the history, and we could fill in more gaps and add in more content without ever having to worry about sort of where it is in the current day timeline. And that is what archaeology and Anachronia and all that stuff adds, because it doesn't matter when you do it. You can be in the 5th age, you can be in the 6th stage, and it works. Well, divination is a bit of a weird one, right? If you want to be strictly chronological, you can't train any divination until you finish the War Wakes. Yeah. But for all the past stuff, that doesn't really apply anymore. So if you look at it from that perspective, they can do much more without getting the awkwardness that we now have around 5th age and 6th age quests and sort of the new storylines that start the difficulties from scratch.
That's actually really good. I like that lens on archaeology.
Well, that's why Jagex pays him the big bucks.
Yeah, and after this podcast, he's going to work on skilling offense.
All right.
You can watch full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. You can also listen to audio versions of RSBANDB Update at update.rsbnb.com, and feel free to subscribe to our show and any number of podcast listeners out there at update.rsbnb.com/subscribe.